I was in Munich on a 2-week business trip when I got a call from my husband Mason, at 2 a.m. local time. The sound of the phone ringing in the dark jolted me awake, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought something urgent had happened back home, maybe something about his mother's health. She lives in San Diego. But what I heard after I picked up the call shattered my world into pieces. "Diana, I'm calling to tell you something. I want a divorce." I was speechless. For a moment my mind went blank. Every word he said echoed like someone had punched me in the chest, knocking the air out of me. "Come again?" I whispered, my voice trembling with shock. "Mason, you're joking, right?" He sighed, but not the tired kind. It was cold. Indifferent. "I'm not joking. You probably didn't notice, but I'm with someone else now. She's younger than you, cuter than you. And we have a child. A baby girl. I want to be with them, so let's get the divorce done quickly." I said nothing. I couldn't speak. It felt like I'd just been pushed off a skyscraper, free-falling through the air. Mason didn't seem to care about my shock. His voice went on, calm and ruthlessly casual. "I already sold the house and the car, everything's done, I just called to let you know, so, goodbye." I heard the call disconnect, abrupt, ice cold. I just sat there, in the upscale hotel room my company had booked, still clutching the phone like it was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. The cold spread from my palm, through my chest, down to my toes. I stared at the dark screen, where Mason still appeared on the most recent call log. I couldn't believe what had just happened. No signs, no warning, just a middle-of-the-night phone call, and he wiped out everything. 5 years of marriage. The house we chose together, the car I drove on weekends, the evenings we spent cooking side by side in the kitchen. Mason really thought I'd fall apart, that I'd beg him to come back in tears. But he picked the wrong woman. I took a deep breath. In my mind, the pieces started to fall into place. The late nights he blamed on meetings, the way he hid his phone, smiled while texting. I'd suspected things, but never imagined this. I didn't call back. I didn't cry. I sat quietly in the dark, the streetlights casting cold, thin lines through the curtain onto the wall. My heart ached, but in that pain something else was rising. A sharp, terrifying clarity. If Mason thought he could destroy me with one phone call, he was in for a surprise. I wasn't going to quietly disappear from the life of a man like that. I set my phone down, got up, and started getting ready for the next workday. Work was the only thing keeping me grounded at that point, but in my mind I had already started mapping out the first steps of a plan not just to walk away from Mason, but to take back everything he thought he'd stolen from me. I came back from the business trip on schedule, no changes, no early returns, no warnings. I didn't tell anyone, not even my mom or sister, about the midnight call. For the remaining 2 weeks in Munich I worked hard, as if nothing had happened. I still finished every proposal, shook hands with clients, and smiled politely during tense meetings. But inside me something had fundamentally changed. A door had closed, and I had no intention of ever opening it again. When the plane landed at Dallas Airport, I walked out of the business class cabin with confidence, pulling my sleek black suitcase, my face showing no emotion. I'd had plenty of time to sort out my feelings, to calculate exactly what was mine and how I would get it back. I didn't go straight home, I went to the bank instead. The $2 million house Mason claimed he sold was actually under my name. So was the silver SUV he used to drive us on weekend trips. I was always the one handling the paperwork, the loans, everything tied to my name, partly because I was practical, partly because Mason hated dealing with financial stuff. He always said, "You're good at this stuff, I get overwhelmed." I did it all, and now I knew exactly what to do. At the bank I requested a temporary freeze on our joint account. Then I visited the lawyer who had helped me with the purchase of my first home. I told him everything, the phone call, the confession, the baby Mason mentioned. The lawyer simply nodded and said, "We're going to handle this in a way he won't see coming." That afternoon I went home, or rather, to the house Mason thought he had already sold. The lights inside were still on. I stepped in, careful not to make a sound, and there he was, lounging on the sofa, legs propped up, remote in hand, expressionless. He didn't even realize I was standing right behind him. "Mason," I said, not loudly but loud enough to make him jump. He turned around sharply. The first expression was shock, then annoyance, then finally, confusion. "Diana? You're back already?" I walked in, placed my purse on the table, took off my coat. Same schedule as before. I just didn't tell you in advance. He stood up, still holding the remote. Well, you know what I said. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought you should know. I didn't answer. I opened the cabinet, pulled out a white envelope and handed it to him. This is the completed divorce paperwork. I only left the signature part blank for you. I've got a copy ready for court and I already have an appointment with the lawyer. Everything will be finalized within a month. Mason's eyes widened. He opened the envelope, looked at the pages. Wait, when did you prepare this? I looked him straight in the eyes. The moment I realized the man I married wasn't the man I used to love. He stammered. Diana, you say that like you're not even hurt. I smiled lightly. Oh, it hurts, but hurting doesn't mean I'll let myself be dragged through the mud. Mason gripped the papers tightly, clearly unsettled. It seemed in his mind I was still the quiet, forgiving wife. But now I was standing here, calm, steady, and not letting him touch any part of the life I had left. And one more thing, I said, opening the desk drawer and pulling out a stack of documents. This is the evidence I gathered about your affair. I hired a private investigator. There are photos, audio recordings. If you think you can walk away without consequences, you might want to read this carefully. Mason sank into the chair, his hand trembling. You spied on me? No need to. You left too many traces, and I'm not the kind of person who waits until she's pushed off a cliff to fight back. I walked upstairs, leaving him there, pale-faced. That night I slept soundly in my own room for the first time in months. I knew storms were still ahead, but one thing was certain. From now on, I was the one in control of the wheel, and Mason, whether he liked it or not, would have to face the consequences of what he'd done. My name is Diana Brooks. I'm 37 years old, and I'm the director of market development at a tech company headquartered in Austin, Texas. It's the job I dreamed of since high school, working in a global environment, speaking multiple languages and constantly learning. To get here, I gave up a lot. College parties, long vacations with friends, and countless evenings alone in a small apartment while others settled down. I used to think I could spend my whole life focused on my career. But then, one June day 7 years ago, I attended the wedding of a former colleague. The party was held at a vineyard outside the city, a romantic setting, twinkling lights, soft music. I still remember the feeling when I first saw Mason, wearing a white shirt, blazer slung over his shoulder, holding a glass of champagne, standing alone in the corner of the patio. You tired of all those long speeches too? He smiled, his eyes lighting up as I happened to stand nearby. I laughed and nodded, can't deny that. We talked the entire evening. He told me he was a manager at a small furniture distribution company, not a high-paying job but stable. He was funny, gentle, and had a way of making you feel truly heard. Compared to the busy, ambitious men I usually met in my field, Mason felt real. I never thought I'd date someone 8 years younger than me, but it happened. Simple dates, walking around the lake, cooking together on weekends, rewatching old movies, gave me a breath of fresh air from all the work pressure. Mason always said things that touched me. I love the way you run your life, you make me want to be better. A year and a half later, he proposed to me on the top of Red Rock Mountain during a short trip to Arizona. I said yes. Maybe I thought, I can have both, a brilliant career and someone who loves me unconditionally. We got married in the fall and I bought a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Austin under my name. I told Mason it was an investment for the future, but deep down I just wanted to create a peaceful place for the two of us. At first, everything was good. I'd get up early to make breakfast, and Mason would brew coffee and walk me to the car. In the evenings, I'd come home to soft yellow lights, dinner already cooked, and jazz music playing in the background. But then, small things started to change. Mason rarely cleaned and almost never touched the laundry. He said, I'm not used to doing this stuff. When I lived with my mom, she did everything. I gently showed him how to separate clothes, use the vacuum, cook a few simple meals, but every time I had to start over, he'd either rush through it or quit halfway. I didn't complain. I thought maybe he just needed more time. But as time passed, instead of improving, Mason started relying on me more. In our second year of marriage, he quit his job, saying he wanted to find a new path that better matched his passion. I supported him, even helped him enroll in a few online interior design courses. But 3 months went by, then 6, and he still did nothing. I worked from early morning until late at night while he stayed home, playing games, watching movies, and waiting for inspiration. One night I came home late, exhausted after a week of presenting at a conference, only to find the house a mess, dishes piled in the sink and Mason lying on the couch with headphones on, laughing loudly at some video. I didn't say anything, I just stood there, a chill crawling up my spine like a sharp wind. I realized I'd gone too far trying to drag someone along who didn't want to move forward. Still, I didn't give up. I thought, maybe one day Mason would change, would find something that made him want to rise, but he didn't. He became lazier, more detached from all household responsibilities. I suggested hiring a cleaner. He refused. I suggested he try a part-time job. He said he was waiting for a bigger opportunity. And then, when he said he wanted a divorce in a long-distance call, I realized I was the one who had waited too long. I should have been stronger. But that's okay. I'm awake now. And this time, there will be no easy forgiveness. One Saturday evening, after another non-stop workday, I came home and saw Mason again in front of the TV, gaming controller in hand, the screen casting a glow over his emotionless face. On the table was a half-eaten pizza box, a soda can, and dirty dishes from lunch still sitting there. I sighed. Not because of the mess, I was used to that, but because of the nameless stagnation. For 6 months since Mason quit his job, I had waited for him to take initiative, to find direction again, but the days of resting to reflect had stretched into months of idleness, and I was out of patience. And hope. I've seen you playing these games all day, I said, half joking as I poured myself a glass of water. Why not try live streaming? Who knows, maybe someone out there would enjoy watching. Mason paused, looked up, his eyes suddenly lighting up. Are you serious? Like, on Twitch or something? I nodded, not thinking much. Give it a shot, better than playing alone all day. I didn't expect that to be the beginning of a turning point I would never forget. At first, Mason only streamed for a few hours each evening, gaming while chatting with a handful of viewers. But after just 3 weeks, his follower count started growing at an impressive rate. People seemed drawn to his deep voice, his humor, and the way he was clumsy in every game. It became his signature. He went by the nickname Maison Air, a play on his name, and before long he had thousands of viewers per stream. See, I actually have talent, he said excitedly when he got his first donation. One day I'll be a top name. I smiled. I still had my doubts, but I didn't want to pour cold water on his rare enthusiasm. I was the one who bought him the professional mic set, webcam, ring light, and even the ergonomic chair he needed to sit for hours without back pain. I thought if this could help Mason find purpose, it was a worthy investment. But as success started to come, Mason started to change, and not for the better. In just 3 months, his channel had over 200,000 followers. He got offers to promote products, attend online events, and even signed a contract with an exclusive streaming platform. Mason began making money, not as much as I did, but enough to live comfortably if he saved. The problem was, he didn't save. In fact, he spent recklessly. Designer clothes, the latest headphones, a smartwatch, even a collection of imported gaming figures from Japan. He ordered constantly, and every time something new arrived, he showed it off like a kid getting a gift. Look at this, limited edition, only 500 in the world, he said, hugging a gold-plated controller he had just bought for nearly $1,000. I asked, are you planning to contribute to the household expenses? Mason shrugged. You make more than I do. Let's just keep our finances separate. You cover your part, I'll cover mine. It sounded reasonable, but in reality he didn't cover anything. Every bill, electricity, water, internet, credit cards, the mortgage, I paid them all. The house was still under my name. The car he used to meet with fans, I bought that too. What hurt me most wasn't the money, it was his indifference. Mason started hiding things about work from me. He never mentioned me on stream anymore, even though he once said, "You're the person I'm most grateful for." Online, he crafted the image of a funny single guy who was too busy to date. One day, I happened to read a comment from a female fan. "Maze, I'm in love with your voice, can't believe you're still single." And Mason's reply was, "I don't know either, maybe it's because I've given all my love to games." I read that reply over and over, and each time, my heart turned a little colder. I used to think if I was patient enough, Mason would change. But now, he wasn't the man who once proposed to me under the Arizona sky. He had chosen his path, one that didn't include me. After Mason started gaining fame as Maison Air, I stayed silent. Not because I didn't know what was going on, but because I had started preparing. No drama, no tears. I quietly gathered every little piece, every lie, every shady move, every trace he left behind, thinking I wouldn't notice. One of Mason's hard habits to break was using my car to go to fan meetups, which were actually dates with women he met through his stream. What Mason didn't know was that I'd installed a modern dashcam system in the SUV, recording not just outside but inside the car, a feature I'd added for my own safety during long business trips. And from those seemingly harmless videos I saw enough. A blonde girl, petite, sitting in the passenger seat, her laughter intimate and warm. In one clip, Mason said, "Just wait until she goes on another business trip, then I'll get everything sorted, the house, the car. I'll take care of it." I didn't feel sad or angry. What I felt most was emptiness. The more I watched, the more I realized Mason wasn't just cheating emotionally, he was planning to use my assets to build a new life with someone else. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Rachel, sharp and discreet. Rachel quickly identified the woman in the videos. Her name was Lacey Monroe, 24 years old, a former customer service rep for a small gaming brand, now unemployed. Lacey had followed Mason since his early streaming days and eventually became one of his most devoted fans. Their relationship started with private messages, turned into meetups, and finally into weekend getaways Mason lied about as community events. Rachel gave me a series of photos of Lacey and Mason at a small hotel in Houston, holding hands, laughing like they were the only two people in the world. In one picture, Lacey rested her head on Mason's shoulder, holding a hospital file labeled prenatal consultation faintly in the corner. When I showed that photo to my lawyer, he simply nodded. "You don't need to say anything more. With this much evidence, we can protect all your assets and push him out of everything." I started taking action. First, I changed every lock in the house, front door, garage, smart home system. I knew Mason liked using the app to enter the house, so I also revoked his access rights. Next, I hired a professional security company to install a tracking device and an anti-theft lock on the SUV. The car was still in the garage, but this time without my fingerprint or the pin I set up, it wouldn't move an inch. Then, I went to the bank. I transferred all my salary, savings, and stock accounts out of the joint account, the one I had once opened, in hopes that we'd manage finances together after marriage. All the bills I had quietly paid, utilities, internet, credit cards, I stopped them entirely. I also contacted the power company to switch the account to my name and revoked Mason's access to all services tied to the house. And finally, I printed out every detailed statement, every item Mason had bought using my supplementary credit card, from the $1,500 gaming chair to the so-called urgent flights to Los Angeles, that I knew had nothing to do with work. I didn't say a word to him, no anger, no confrontation. I let everything play out like a row of dominoes I had already lined up. When I headed to the airport for a 3-week business trip to Seoul, a trip I had planned for months, I left a short note on the kitchen counter. "If you need anything, contact my lawyer. And if you want to play the abandoned husband role, be my guest. The door's locked. So is the car. And the easy life you used to have? That's over." I closed the door, carrying just one suitcase and a calm smile. Behind me was a house, locked tight. Ahead of me was a flight to freedom. But I knew the real show would begin when I returned. Because Mason thought he was in control of the game. But he had no idea. I was the one who planned every move from the start. The 3-week work trip in Seoul passed with an oddly steady rhythm. I threw myself into meetings, negotiations, and expansion plans for our Asia branch, as if nothing had happened. Yet every night back in the hotel, I opened my laptop to check the security cameras at home. The house was quiet. No one got in. The SUV remained untouched in the garage. And I knew Mason was starting to suffocate in the very independent dream he once bragged about. I booked a red-eye flight to avoid attention, but somehow Mason still found out my schedule. As I walked out of the Dallas International Terminal, rolling my suitcase past the crowd, I heard a familiar voice, sharp as a blade. "Deanna." I stopped and turned. Mason was rushing toward me, face flushed red, eyes blazing. He was wearing that expensive hoodie I once bought for him, now wrinkled, and he no longer looked like the successful streamer he used to be. He blocked my path, panting like he'd run a marathon. Sirs, what the hell did you do? I tilted my head, calmly, like someone being wrongly blamed for something trivial. I'm not sure I understand. What are you referring to? You know exactly what I mean, Mason growled. Locks changed, car locked, bank accounts moved. I can't get into the house, the car won't start, even the credit card I used got declined. I had a meeting with a real estate agent yesterday and I stood there like an idiot outside the house, couldn't even open the door. I set my suitcase down and crossed my arms. People passing by started to glance over, but I didn't care. I'd been waiting for this moment for 3 weeks, honestly, for years. You were planning to sell the house? I raised an eyebrow. That's odd, because according to the title, the house is in my name. All the documents are in the safety deposit box at the bank. Mason's eyes widened. But I lived there. I'm your husband. On paper, I smiled, the kind of smile that made him hesitate. But property ownership? That's not tied to marriage unless there's joint documentation. Remember when you said, just let me know what to sign? You're better at this paperwork stuff. Mason's face shifted from red to pale. His mouth opened but no words came out. And the car, I continued, my voice light as air, also in my name. I installed a tracker and remote lock. When I activated the security mode, the entire system shut down. Of course, you couldn't use it. You did all this just to get back at me? He hissed. I shrugged. I did it to protect my assets, from someone who openly has a mistress and is planning a new life without even informing his legal wife. Honestly, you should be grateful I'm being this polite. Mason stepped closer, lowered his voice, but the fury was still in his eyes. Diana, if you keep acting like this, people are going to see who you really are. I didn't step back. I looked straight at him. You should be more worried about people seeing who you really are. I pulled out my phone, opened a preloaded video clip and held it up for him. On the screen, he was in the car, hands on the wheel with Lacey, the blonde girl who once called him my hero, in the passenger seat. They were laughing, completely unaware that every move was being recorded from an in-car angle. I looked at him, my face emotionless. The dash cam records audio too, remember? Everything you and she said? About waiting for me to leave town so you could sell the house and using the money to buy a new place. It's all saved. Mason took a step back, his face ashen. You came back just to humiliate me? No, Mason, I came back to end this, and to remind you who actually built everything and who is just clinging to someone else's success. He looked like he wanted to say something but then fell silent. A few people nearby began whispering and pointing. I figured the rumors about his secret relationship with Lacey were starting to spread online. I pulled my suitcase and walked past him. As I passed, I paused, speaking low but clearly. I've sent all the evidence to my lawyer. And if you block my path one more time, the next person you'll be talking to is the police. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see his expression one more time. Ahead of me was the cool Texas morning, a waiting taxi and a whole new life I was about to start, this time with no baggage, and absolutely no Mason in it. I stepped into the taxi, gently pulling the door closed behind me. The driver asked where I wanted to go and I simply said home. But deep down I knew the home I was returning to wasn't a place to rest. It was a battlefield I needed to clear before I could begin again. And I knew Mason wouldn't give up easily. I arrived late in the afternoon. The Texas air was still, like it was holding its breath before something erupted. As soon as I stepped inside, I wasn't surprised to find Mason sitting in the living room, eyes wild, head in his hands, face blank. He'd apparently snuck in by getting an old spare key from someone. It didn't matter. I didn't feel violated anymore, just exhausted by his endless nerve. I'm not leaving, Mason said as I walked past. I have rights, we're not officially divorced yet. I set my bag on the table, opened my laptop, not even looking at him. Then let's clear things up right now. I opened a folder I had carefully prepared. There are a few things you need to see before you keep playing the victim. I turned the screen toward Mason. He glanced at it, then immediately went pale as the car video played, showing him holding hands with Lacey, exchanging sweet words, and especially the part where he said, as soon as she goes on another business trip, I'll sell the house, we'll have enough money to start over. Mason swallowed hard, about to speak, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. I opened another file, photos taken by Rachel, the private investigator. Clear, detailed shots. Lacey holding hands with other men, not just one but at least 3. One of them was taking her to a prenatal consultation at a clinic in North Houston. The photo was taken from a distance but clear enough to see. That man was not Mason. You said she was the only one who truly understood you, that she really cared about you, I said, my voice calm like I was reading a financial report. But did you ever stop to think that someone who truly loves you wouldn't say, "Hurry up and get divorced, I want you to be my husband before the baby's born," while still holding hands with someone else? No way, Mason whispered, backing away like someone had shoved him. Lacey told me. I was the first one who made her feel safe, she said. She was sure the baby was mine. I gently pulled another stack of papers from my bag and laid them on the table. Preliminary DNA screening report. The man who took her to the appointment? Another streamer named Ethan Wells. And according to the information we've gathered, they'd known each other long before she ever met you. Mason sat frozen, lips moving but no words coming out. There were no excuses left, no justifications. Everything was crystal clear. Lacey hadn't just betrayed me with him, she was playing him too. She used you. The same way you thought you were using me, I said, every word cold and sharp as steel. Deanna? Mason murmured, but I cut him off. What are you going to say, sorry? Or that it's also my fault for being too strong? Don't waste your breath. I stood up, giving one last look to the man who used to be my husband, now just a pitiful figure drowning in the delusions he painted for himself. I used to think you were weak, but at least sincere, but no. You're just selfish enough to believe the whole world should revolve around you. I took out my phone and dialed quickly. Aaron, can you come remove someone from my house right now? He's sitting in the living room. I ended the call without looking back. In less than 15 minutes, my personal attorney and 2 civil security officers arrived. They escorted Mason out of the house, this time for good. I stood on the front steps, watching his figure disappear in the car. There was no more anger, no more pain in me, just a vague sense of relief. Like the storm had finally passed. But I also knew the aftershocks of this storm would last, and Mason hadn't yet seen the full consequences of what he'd done. But I was ready. I never planned to make things public, at least not at first, but as I stood in my living room watching Mason crumble, not from regret but from fear of losing his reputation, I realized he never truly cared about anyone but himself. And some people only wake up when the spotlight hits them straight in the face. 3 days later, I posted a 5-minute video on a major video sharing platform, not using my personal account but through a media industry friend's channel. The video had no commentary, no drama, just audio clips, images and spliced footage. Mason in the car with Lacey, his words about selling the house while I was on a work trip, the 2 of them embracing outside a hotel, and the preliminary DNA report. Each frame had timestamps, locations, and clear audio. The title was simple: When a Popular Streamer Lies to You, in the Game and in Real Life. No one expected the video to go viral that fast. Within 24 hours it hit over 1 million views. Mazoner shot to the top of search trends, but not for his wholesome streams anymore, for betrayal and dishonesty exposed, with no mercy. His fan page flooded with comments. I spent hundreds on merch for a liar. Thought you were single? You've got a wife and a mistress? What's this about the baby, not even his? I didn't need to say another word, the internet took care of the rest. People dug through his old streams, dissected every detail, exposed every contradiction. Several brands that once sponsored Mason terminated their contracts that same week. A major gaming company even issued a public apology for partnering with him, stating, "We do not condone personal misconduct that impacts the community." The collapse happened so fast even I was surprised. Saturday night, as I was working in my temporary apartment in downtown Austin, the phone rang. I recognized Mason's number immediately. I had blocked it but temporarily reopened a communication line for legal procedures. I picked up but said nothing. His voice came through, trembling. "Diana, please, I have nothing left." I stayed silent. My fans are gone, sponsors dropped me, everyone online is tearing me apart like I'm some kind of monster. I can't even leave the house, can't bring myself to go live. Silence. I know I messed up, I just didn't think you'd go this far. You were the only one who ever stood by me, believed in me. I'm sorry, please give me another chance, I replied in a calm, even tone. A chance? The kind of chance you gave me by hiding our marriage, trying to sell my assets, and planning to run off with another woman while I was halfway around the world? He choked. I didn't think Lacey would betray me. I thought... I didn't let him finish. Mason, you didn't think anything. You just thought you were smarter than everyone else. There was another pause, then I said, from now on all communication goes through my lawyer. If you keep calling me directly, I'll take it to the authorities. But... I love you, he whispered like someone drowning. I looked out the window. The Austin night skyline glowing with city lights. I smiled, this time with no bitterness. No, Mason, you don't love anyone. You only love having someone who'll do everything for you. I hung up. 2 days later, Mason held a livestream called The Final Apology. In it, he bowed his head, tried to sound remorseful, attempted sincerity, but with viewer numbers down to 1/10 of what they once were, and the chat filled with clown emojis and sarcasm, he cracked. The stream cut off midway. That was the final broadcast on Maison Air. I didn't watch it, but Rachel, my private investigator, sent me the recording, with a single note. The liar finally exits the stage. I saved the clip in a folder called Closure. I no longer cared about Mason. But I kept it as a reminder. Never trade your peace for someone who doesn't deserve it. A few weeks after the fallout, my lawyer informed me that Mason had officially accepted all terms of the divorce. No negotiation, no resistance. He made only one request: to keep a few personal items and his streaming equipment collection, which, according to him, was all he had left. I agreed. But agreeing didn't mean I'd forget. In the divorce settlement, Mason was required to compensate me for financial and emotional damages, including money withdrawn from the supplementary credit card under my name, repairs to the house after months of neglect, and the cost of hiring a private investigator. My lawyer calculated everything in detail and sent him a reimbursement claim, not an enormous sum, but enough to leave him reeling. Not long after, I found out he had sold all his streaming gear and even his personal computer to pay me back. It didn't end there. 3 companies Mason had partnered with, from gaming brands to a publishing company he once represented, all filed claims for image damages and terminated contracts early. The very things he once bragged about as his own achievements were now legal messes and mounting debts. Mason's family, his parents from suburban Denver, initially called asking what happened, but after I sent them all the evidence without commentary, they fell silent. Not long after, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that his parents had cut ties with him and deleted every social media account where they once proudly shared his streams. Maybe they were just too ashamed to defend a son like that. And Lacey? I thought I wouldn't care about her anymore, but life has a way of throwing little twists at you. One day, while I was waiting for my coffee at my usual cafe, I overheard 2 baristas chatting. That girl had to move back in with her parents in Oklahoma. Just a few months ago she was posting stories showing off her baby bump, and now she's completely vanished. I turned my head. One of them had just mentioned the name Lacey Monroe. I didn't say anything. I simply took my coffee and walked straight to my car. But once I sat in the driver's seat, I pulled out my phone and searched her name again. Lacey's profile had been switched to private, but from older public comments I saw she used to post ultrasound photos and cryptic captions about a new future with the one I love. Yet all of those posts had been deleted. According to the information Rachel, my private investigator, later sent me, the man who took Lacey to her prenatal appointment, streamer Ethan Wells, had completely cut ties with her after the scandal broke. While he never released a public statement, it was reported that he requested a private DNA test. The result? He was not the father. Rejected by both men and attacked by online communities, Lacey had no choice but to move back in with her parents, the same ones who had stopped supporting her when she dropped out of college to pursue a free-spirited life. Now, according to Rachel's sources, Lacey is living in a small town near Tulsa, working part-time at a local grocery store, raising the baby alone while awaiting legal decisions about custody. Someone once asked me if I felt satisfied seeing the 2 of them hit rock bottom. Honestly, no. I didn't find joy in their suffering. I just felt a quiet peace, knowing that the truth had finally come to light, and that justice, though not through a courtroom or a sentence, had still found its way. I once loved Mason, once believed in him, once gave him everything I had, but all I got in return was deceit, manipulation, and betrayal. The only thing that kept me standing was the belief that someday, the truth would speak for itself. And that day had come. As I pulled out of the cafe parking lot, I glanced at the rearview mirror and smiled to myself. The past was now just a reflection to glance back on, not a place to return to. And I knew from that moment on, I would never again let anyone define my worth through their lens or their needs. It took me nearly 2 months to wrap up all the legal matters, sell the old house, finalize the asset transfers, and sort out everything tied to Mason. When it was all done, I stood in front of the home I had once poured so much hope into. The home I'd bought with nearly a decade's worth of savings, personally picked out every brick and every coat of paint, and felt no attachment. That place was now just an empty shell of memories, once full of promise but later built on lies. I signed the sale papers with a calm smile. The realtor was surprised I didn't hesitate about the price. But to me, walking away from that place, escaping every corner that reminded me of false moments, was a gain that no price difference could measure. With the money from the sale and the compensation from Mason, I moved into a small penthouse apartment in downtown Austin, not far from my office but higher up, quieter, and most importantly, entirely my own. There was no room for anyone else to squeeze in. The new place had just 2 bedrooms, an open living area connected to the kitchen, and a balcony facing the Colorado River where I could watch the sunset every evening after work. I chose the furniture myself, this time not to please both of us, but to reflect my own taste. Creamy white walls, a charcoal gray sofa, a few green potted plants in the corners, and a long wooden bookshelf where I organized my favorite books from college, the ones Mason once called a waste of space. I also bought a new car. Not a flashy sports car or a bulky SUV like before, but a sleek hybrid sedan, compact, efficient, and blissfully quiet. Exactly the type I had always liked but never dared to choose because he needed space for his stream gear. Now I didn't have to prioritize anyone else. Everything was for me, and only me. One evening, after organizing the last drawer and hanging an abstract painting I'd bought from a local art fair, I sat on the armchair by the window, sipping mint tea and writing out a list of things I wanted to do in the coming year. On the 3rd line I wrote, with certainty, without hesitation, adopt a cat. I had wanted a cat since college, but when I started my career I was too busy. When I got married, Mason was allergic to fur, or at least, that's what he always claimed. Now, no one could complain. I had already found a nearby animal rescue center. Next week, I'd go there, meet the cats, and choose a companion that felt right. I didn't want to rush. This time, I'd choose with my heart, not based on anyone else's approval. My career also took an unexpected turn. When word of my divorce reached the board along with whispers I knew were inevitable, I thought it might affect me. But instead, they commended my professionalism during such a personal storm. I was promoted to head of global coordination for emerging markets, a role I once dreamed about but never imagined would come so soon. The day I received the promotion, I left the office later than usual. The Texas spring air was unusually cool, a light breeze moving through the trees lining South Congress Avenue. I stopped at a roadside diner, ordered a veggie burger and a cold soda. When the server brought the food, she looked at me and smiled. "You look like someone who's had a long day. But the kind worth remembering, right?" I smiled and nodded. "That's right. A long day, and one worth living." That night I went home, turned off my phone, played soft jazz, and laid back on the lounge chair on my balcony, eyes on the starry sky. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to come back, I wasn't waiting for a text, I wasn't waiting for an explanation. I was only waiting for peace. And finally it had come, quiet, gentle, but as profound as the first breath after surfacing from deep water. I knew, from here on out, no matter how many challenges lie ahead, I would never lose myself again. Life doesn't always go as we hope, but it's in the stumbles that we learn how to rise stronger. I once gave up everything for someone who didn't deserve it, but in the end I reclaimed it all, in my own way. Now, I don't live to please anyone else. I choose to live authentically, honoring the peace and freedom I fought to reclaim. Happiness doesn't come from someone else giving it to you, it comes from the choices you make every single day. What do you think about Diana's journey? Did she choose the right path for herself? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories and powerful life lessons.